Hello everybody, this is RC Central here, and today we're going to be looking at a differential mod involving the Traxxas E-Maxx or T-Maxx differential, and getting this differential to fit into the Turnigy Trooper, because the Turnigy Trooper comes with differentials in the front and rear and middle, and the front and rear ones have some stripping problems under 3S power, and because I love running 3S and the ESC can handle it, I've been stripping out my differentials, and I only have one Traxxas differential here today because I have basically welded, you could say, the rear differential by super gluing all the gears and stuff together, so I don't need to worry about that stripping because the gear that strips isn't the big gear on the inside that goes along this flat edge. It's a spider gear that's inside the actual differential itself, and because that's glued, it's not going to be stripping or anything. And so I only have one Traxxas differential, and really my goal is to get this to fit into that, where this plate is right here. Because if I can get this into there, then it should be a really basically overkill differential. You can run these on 6S and they'll be fine. And so my job is to get that into that so that it works. Lots of that's right there in that sentence, and still going on that. But other than that, I'm going to explain how to get this to fit into that, and it involves some modifications. It doesn't just drop in. So if you're not a modification heavy, I guess, person, then I wouldn't recommend doing this. Although if you don't mind cutting up some plastic and drilling some pieces, then really it's an excellent upgrade for the Turnigy Trooper if you do have one. So this is a Traxxas E-Maxx differential here, and you can find these on Amazon running for about $30 to $60, and to me that's really overpriced. So I kept snooping around, and eventually I found this one, and it is genuine. I've taken it apart, checked it all before modifying it a little bit, as I've already done, and I got this for $12. $12, and really that is insanely cheap, and there were only two available, and I don't know if the other one is still on Amazon, but that just shows that if you do enough research, you can find expensive parts for extremely cheap, and really it's just really worth it to do that extra research to find really cheap parts. So this is the differential that I'm trying to fit into there. The stock differential has some slight differences. The dimensions are pretty much the same. As for just basic, like that long and that tall and everything else, the dimensions are pretty much the same, although there are some slight differences, and that's where the modifications happen. It doesn't have the differential inside, this is just the case, but really most of the modifying has to do with the case. So on the stock differential, you can see there's this pin on both sides, and that pin is centered in the differential. It's centered between those 2 points. And on the bulkhead, it slots into this little hole right here, and that's centered so it fits in nicely. Whereas on the Traxxas E-Maxx differential, it does have a pin, which is good, but it's not centered. It's up at the top. And so when you try and fit that into this, it's going to end up here, not down here, and it's not going to slot in. So one of the modifications that you have to do is drill a hole up here, and then fill the original hole with super glue to strengthen it, because it's reasonably thick, but it's better to strengthen it while you can, and then that'll fit in. So we've solved the problem with the pins fitting. I just have to drill a hole in there, pins fit, all good. Well, there's one more problem with fitting into that bulkhead. On this side, you can see there are two rings. There's this outer ring, and there's an inner ring that's a little bit taller. You can see better from the side and from the top. And the inner ring is what I want. That inner ring, the taller one, is the one that fits into the bulkhead very well and snugly. Whereas the outer one is the one that's in the way. It stops this from fitting in all the way, and then you can't squish the two bulkheads together to get this to fit onto the truck. So, and that ring is on both sides, you can drill or sand away that ring, and I've done it here. And you can see I just have that main big ring, and then the other ring is completely off the differential. And how I got that off, most people use a Dremel, but I don't recommend doing that because you can drill into the differential itself, and then you have leaking fluids everywhere when you run your truck. So I made a makeshift tool that is really just cheaply designed. It has a little button. There's a 9-volt inside of there. The case part is from a toilet paper roll, or you can even do it with a what is missing? Paper towel roll. There we go. Words today. English. And it has just a little tiny brushed motor and a shaft that has some electrical tape and a strip of sandpaper. So that's sandpaper, and it's held on by electrical tape, and that spins extremely fast when you press the button. So really what I've made is a sandpaper power tool. And so all I did was drill away or sand away at that until it disappeared. I've already started on this side right here. You can see that's low and that's high. So it takes some time, but it is worth it. And then I just sand down manually with a piece of sandpaper to make it as flush as I possibly can. And it roughs it up, but you're not going to see that part inside the differential. And so now we've solved 2 of the 3 problems. The pins fit. Once I get that done, the rings fit, and so this will now slot into the bulkheads and fit inside the truck. But there is one more problem with these output shafts. They are just a little bit too big to fit into these cups, and they just don't slide on. And so you can see on the cup, it has a darker outer piece, and then it has a much lighter inner ring, and it's about halfway through that inner ring that needs to be drilled away to get it to fit onto the cups. And another thing that you may notice is that on Traxxas differentials, there's a pin that goes through that hole, whereas on this, there's just a grub screw that goes through one side. And I thought that'd be a problem at first, but if you think about it, this still has a flat edge, so see, flat edge on the output shaft. And so the grub screw is still big enough to tighten onto that flat edge and keep it in place, so it's not much different from the stock differential. You could drill out the other side of this cup to make another hole and then thread the pin through it, but that's really not necessary if you can just use the original grub screw. So that's pretty much all this video has to say. It's a mediocre modification. Just 3 things that have to be changed to get this to fit in, and then you have a really overkill differential for your truck that's never going to strip. So that's it for this video today. This is RC Central. Goodbye.